Hello, everyone. So my name's Kevin Hannon, and today I'm going to talk about being a maintainer in this crazy world that we live in, which is everything is AI, AI, AI. So yeah, I'm happy to be here at Open Source Summit. It's the first time I've been here, and it's been a conference I've wanted to attend for a while now. So why am I here? Generally, a lot of my talk is going to be about my experience in having the Kubernetes community start embracing AI in maintainership, and some of this is early stages, some of it is stuff is already actionable, but generally a lot of this is my experience in the last year in the Kubernetes ecosystem about trying to stay relevant and also keep up with the idea that people are now using AI. So generally I am a co-chair for the working group batch in Kubernetes, so projects like Kubernetes queuing, and other really around AI infra on Kubernetes. I'm kind of involved in helping steer all these different communities and kind of figuring out how to actually run AI workloads on Kubernetes. I'm also an approver for the Kubernetes enhancement process, so a lot of the features coming in, I'm kind of playing a role in at least approving from the production readiness aspect, so I'm kind of very in tune with what's going on, all the different features. Open Source Summit, I'm a big fan of open source. I find my career has honestly gone in a better direction now that I've started embracing open source, and I want to continue that momentum going for others. So I'm really happy about trying to get more people to contribute to open source. And AI, this conference isn't so bad, but some conferences AI feels like you're being sold a bunch of snake oil. So I'll be honest, I don't fully buy humans are no longer needing a job. I probably will not be able to run a grape farm while I'm running an open source project. I'll probably be maintaining all the agents, and that's kind of I view it like an intern, but I think the tools are useful. So I'll talk about how you can actually meet the tools where they are and not sell you on you don't need humans anymore. So generally the topic for me for this talk is I want to talk to you all about how you can use AI to reduce maintainer burnout and also provide stable software for our users. Generally, that's kind of what we're all here for. So this might seem silly, but I find that what a maintainer is kind of vague. It's depending on project to project. If you take a small project, a couple people, they have approver access to the entire repo. That makes sense for a maintainer, but for a project like Kubernetes, we have a bunch of sub-owners. We have probably hundreds of what we would call maintainers because there are people that are they're sort of staff engineers for their areas. So if you're familiar with enterprise development, you can imagine this a staff engineer for a project is really a good way of thinking of what a maintainer is. They may not be doing all the development, but they might be reviewing features, setting direction, and kind of coaching new contributors to sort of take over. And that's kind of what I mean by a maintainer. A lot of times when you say write access to a repo, that doesn't really scale very well for a lot of projects. So typically it's more like sub-owners and people that can approve their areas is kind of what I like to think of a maintainer. And the sad matter of fact with maintainers is I'm guilty of this when I take a new project and I want to try it out. I might file an issue, maybe I'll fix it, and then once my issue merges, I'm kind of piecing out and doing something else, and then maintainers are still keeping the project running. And that usually work does fall on maintainers to kind of after enthusiastic contributors leave, after their feature goes in, who's responsible for keeping the project going? Maintainers. So generally, I think that AI is very new. I don't really agree with this quote at KubeCon that we're all junior engineers. I think my experience of AI kind of mimics my 2-year-old, and that I'm still sort of figuring out how to actually use it. A lot of what I'll talk about in the rest of this talk is my experience over the last year, and pretty much I still find we're still figuring things out. I don't think if people here feel like they know how to use AI in their open source projects and they feel like everything is perfect, please let me know. I still am learning how to actually support it and even figure out some basic questions. So that's why I say we're all toddler engineers when it comes to AI. So this is the newborn phase. So you can kind of think, what should you do as an open source project to start using AI? So not many newborns care about this, but you should publish an AI contribution policy. So generally, this sounds kind of boring, but you wouldn't believe the first PR I had in Kubernetes, I used AI to fix a bug, and then I felt like I had an entire days-long discussion about whether or not our project actually accepts AI. Should I attribute AI as a commit message? Should I use how I used it? Should we even accept this PR? And all these conversations were going deep in a pull request, and it was kind of annoying because at the point, all I wanted to do was fix a CI bug. I didn't want to get into a philosophical discussion about whether or not we should actually accept AI. So that's why I started drafting our first AI contribution policy in Kubernetes, because if I'm the one, I'm experienced in this community, I don't want other people to have to fight, can I use AI, can I not? So that's why this is important. Major takeaway for this is please publish an AI contribution policy if you don't have one. Now, what I won't tell you is what it should say, unfortunately. I've seen, the area that scares me is kind of the you only live once AI policies, which these come from AI ecosystem tools where people are saying, you know what, I don't care if OpenClaw is writing my PRs or it's an agent, I will accept everything and I will just figure out how to deal with the mess. Or maybe I'm being a little too mean here, but that's kind of how I imagine it would turn out in the long run. But it fits the project's needs, so people are doing that. AI discouraged, this is kind of coming from Llama CPP and Gentoo are it's kind of funny. Llama.cpp is a way of hosting large language models on your own hardware. They actually discourage the use of AI in contributing to their own code base, down to the point where if you try to contribute a PR, it fast fails your agent saying, please read the contributor docs. We don't accept AI pull requests. But it's easy to override that, but I think it's kind of a funny take that they take. And then Gentoo is a popular one where they don't allow any use of AI. I don't know how they enforce that, but they say that we don't accept generative AI pull requests. And then the Linux kernel, I think as of maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, finally announced that they are actually going to start. They accept AI pull requests, but generally the human owns everything, and you shouldn't even attribute AI in your commit message because the human that submitted it is the person that actually owns the code, not the AI agent. And that's kind of a similar pattern we took in Kubernetes. Ours was first published maybe 6 months ago, and we've been kind of iterating on it. So it's very short. Basically, we had four ideas for our AI policy. One, humans need to understand the code. I know it seems silly, but it is surprising to I was at a tech meetup where someone said they find when people use AI, their brain turns off. And I found that kind of happens sometimes where people will say, oh, I don't understand how this code works, but AI told me it works, so it passes the CI, so that's it. And then we kind of want to discourage that. You submit a PR, you actually do own the code that you submitted. So that's one main policy. Another one that we saw this in some other projects where they really want to discourage the use of AI, both from maintainer to contributor feedback, responding on pull requests, because there's almost no point in having a maintainer writes a detailed pull comment to a PR, and then they just feed it in the code Claude, and it says, you are absolutely correct. Here, I'm just going to apply this. We see that happening quite a bit, and we kind of want to try to discourage that, because the whole point of the pull request is kind of a teachable moment for contributors, is at least how I have always viewed it. And so a lot of times that gets lost if people are just blindly feeding the feedback from the maintainer into the PR. So that's one reason why we kind of discourage that use. And this goes both ways for maintainers and contributors. We don't want maintainers responding to all pull requests with AI, because it kind of defeats the whole purpose anyway of why contributing is you are trying to contribute as humans, not as AI. And disclosing is a big one for us, because we want to set the stage that AI was used. I think this is, mostly it's a good thing to do, because generally people kind of guess now, is this AI, is it not? And at least saying, I used AI, how I used it is, I guess, a good way to give people some ideas. And then we had a funny problem happening in Kubernetes where about 3 or 4 months ago, we found that when you use Claude Code, it does a commit message co-authored by, and it was passing our corporate license agreement. And we were like, wait, how does that happen? Because how can Claude actually be contributing itself for corporate licensing? And we found out that the CNCF, the CLA check, does not by default run on co-authors. So we enabled that in Kubernetes. So now if you use stuff like Copilot or Claude as a co-author, it will fail the CLA checks. So that way we're able to kind of enforce that. And that's one reason, that's also in our policy, we do ask that, don't attribute it to an assistant. We don't want to provide like free advertisement for all the AI tools out there. And yeah, if you're curious, it's a pretty short policy. Please check it out. All right, so now we're on to the crawling phase. You have an AI contribution policy. So what's next? The first one I see is people, I'll be honest, this one I find quite challenging to do in a large open source project like Kubernetes. I think we are still figuring out how to have a README that gives enough context for agents that doesn't require us to maintain another set of docs for just the agent. And we're still kind of figuring out, like, what do we actually want our agent to say? How do you minimize the context you're using for your assistant while also providing enough information for how to actually use it to be productive? And please, if you have any ideas on this one, please talk to me. I've been kind of leaning towards having it more help on, generating commits, pull requests, and just focusing on like the test-driven development aspect of our project. Sorry, excuse me. And so yeah, generally I kind of view assistants as like test-driven development on steroids. Like they're kind of running a test feedback loop in parallel, making sure you pass tests. And a lot of times I like to make sure that the agent I'm using knows how to actually run our tests. And that's something that I tend to kind of like having the AGENTS.md focus on. But there's a wide range of how you can do this. Llama CPP, that's the one where they actually fail the agent from saying, like, if you say generate an issue for this one, they'll say, nope, read our contributor docs. That's not allowed. And that's how they actually do that to enforce like people just blindly just like throwing agents at it. So something I've been kind of doing over the last few months, honestly, is kind of, if you're familiar with like extreme coding practice, like peer coding or peer review, no, I forget what it's called now. I feel like I don't hear people talking about peer coding as much anymore. But generally, I like to kind of use AI as a reviewer. So I will check out the pull request and then actually have my assistant like Claude or Copilot or whatever I have. Gemini is the other one I use to kind of do a first pass review, just to kind of say, like, can I catch anything glaring? Can I help make sure, like, is this ready for me to like fully invest my time at? Like, do they miss tests? Is the CI failing, which you can obviously check, but sometimes it's a good way to kind of set the stage, especially if I'm distracted, honestly. But overall, like, it's actually impressive how different the tool, like Claude and Gemini, do catch different things. So sometimes I have been in parallel running both and kind of seeing like what is each catch, and just kind of trying to make sure that the PRs are as stable as possible. So an area that's near and dear to my heart lately in the Kubernetes community is trying to get us to adopt AI code review tools. And one of the downsides of working in a large project like Kubernetes is we have a lot of people owning different areas. So like even the maintainers may not have the ability to actually install some of these GitHub apps. So a lot of times we're trying to make the case of which AI code review tool should we actually roll out for Kubernetes. We have a lot of tools and a lot of people using Kubernetes, so we want to make sure we pick the right one at the time. But generally, you have Copilot, Gemini Code Assist, CodeRabbit, Codo, greptile, and I don't even know what the one I have in the middle is. But yeah, a lot of these offer free open source options for projects. So I have seen some projects will install 3 or 4 of these and just kind of let them be like the first gate to their contributors to kind of like help steer their PRs in the right direction. The unfortunate part is all these do require some tuning. Like internally, we use CodeRabbit, and we rolled it out company-wide, and we find that we do have to kind of tune the settings to make it fit like how we actually want reviews to happen. So a lot of times it's not as effortless as just installing. Like Copilot has, we have found that we've had to tune like the Copilot instructions to make sure it doesn't review code that is auto-generated, for example. But really our goal is to kind of start trying to roll this out in more of a trial period for some of our sub-projects in Kubernetes to kind of see how well it performs. So hopefully that will happen soon. And if you are a CNCF maintainer, they actually offer a free GitHub Copilot Enterprise. So you can actually sign up on that. I guess I have it on the QR code, which kind of gives you information about how you can actually request to get Copilot for free. So now we're at the running phase. As a toddler, they're still tripping and falling, unfortunately, and that's kind of how I view AI. But I still think it's not so bad. You can get a lot of stuff done, but I will talk about one thing that I felt like an idiot trying to use AI for that I didn't think I needed to check, but I did. So, this is, if you're familiar in AI, everyone was talking about last year, model context protocols. There's a lot of talks here, and this works pretty well, I find, but it's kind of bloated for like the maintainer aspect and a lot of coding. Like I personally have actually slowly started phasing out my use of MCP servers for just using like my assistants. Like I mostly do coding related work, so a lot of times it's GitHub and Jira, and I'm finding I'm able to kind of use like fine-tune skills or even just rely on the pre-training of the model to like, how to like actually read a GitHub issue. I don't really need an MCP server for that. It can just do that. And so I find over time, like this has kind of been more recent in the last few months, we've been starting to try to embrace like agent skills for some of our projects in Kubernetes to kind of speed up some tasks I'll talk about. So, generally, I kind of view it like I'm kind of lazy, and I'll be honest, maybe I shouldn't say this in an engineering conference, but I don't really write a lot of Python, and if ever I have to write something if I ever have to automate something, it usually takes me a lot of time to write it in Python, but sometimes I can use AI to kind of build that automation tool that I really wanted, that I will probably, I mostly work in Golang, so I don't experience a lot, I don't do a lot in Python. So I find that helpful to kind of, build quick automation tools or help like me in my day-to-day, and that's something that I've been kind of using AI for like, some certain skills that I find that are helpful. And generally, I'll talk about a couple of time-consuming tasks I do as a maintainer that I've started looking at how to use skills for. So, this is a pretty common one. The Kubernetes project has, last I checked, we have 900 open issues right now and around 50,000 that are closed. So the idea of actually finding duplicates for a GitHub issue is actually quite daunting. So a lot of people don't do this. And sometimes what I find is useful, and I do try to look at the GitHub issues for Kubernetes, find like people are filing an issue, it's related to an existing feature. How about I link to that and let them know that this work is already going on? We kind of just that's sort of community driven, and that I think is still very useful. It shows people that the project does care about our contributors. The next thing is, once you have an issue, how do you decide who actually looks at it? And this is maybe Kubernetes specific, but we have sub-projects like SIG, special interest groups, and also sometimes we will tag, in particular, people that we know worked on a feature. And this is something that people do. We wish it was more automated, but the way the world works is we're probably not going to get to automating everything, unfortunately. And then if you have a bug report or regression, actually figuring out whether or not it's a real bug or even root cause analysis is really time consuming, and a lot of times it's really important, but people don't really do it that much, or they do if they ran into the problem themselves. But anyway, and then I'll be honest, joining the open source ecosystem, I didn't realize how much writing I was going to do. I did not like writing, and now I feel like my job is pretty much always writing GitHub issues and pull requests and responding to feedback, and it kind of is an unfortunate fact of open source development. But honestly, it takes a lot of time to write a good response and tag the right people, and this is something that I think AI can really help with. I took one example from a project I work on in Q. Sorry, it's kind of hard to read. Basically, the issue is about someone reported a metric that showed bad data, and they're like, this is wrong, fix it, please. And they gave pretty details, and I was like, what, why don't I just try using my assistant, read the issue, and then do a root cause analysis and find, the buggy code, where the metric, what metrics impacted in this issue. Actually pointed out the user filed an issue around one of the metrics. The agent said, oh, there's this other metric that's also impacted. And then they also proposed a fix. So I kind of what I like is I want to empower users when they file issues to actually fix their own issues. That's how you get people coming back to the open source projects. And so in this case, yes, I could have fed this to my own agent to implement it. I decided to just not do that and just say, here's the analysis. Would you like to contribute? It doesn't look too bad. This actually looks like a legit problem. And within an hour or two of them filing the issue, they opened up a pull request, and then we were able to get it merged and added into our release branches pretty quick. And so these are the things that I think is a nice way to actually use AI for all, as more people are using these projects, they also, it's something I find is actually a nice thing to do. And how you can use it, it actually works out pretty well. The other one, I really hate CI. It is the most, maybe there's a CI, I think a CD con. I'm glad some people really like working on that. But generally, I find that every open source project, the CI is a bane of everyone's existence. I had a contributor, one of the first open source jobs I joined, he said that when he joins an open source project, he likes to go right to the CI and help out, because he finds that that's always the most tech debt, and that's how most people will actually really appreciate getting help in the CI and just making sure your CI is still stable. But the reality is everyone's busy, and maybe you're involved in the development cycle for a week or so. You're following all the PRs that are merging. Maybe you're not. Maybe you take a vacation for a week and you come back, and you're wondering why is everything completely broken. And this is maybe this is Kubernetes' problem, but I find this happens all the time. Every release cycle, people start breaking the CI. No one really, and then you could argue why is that not on the pull request? Yeah, you're right. It probably should be, but also at the time we can't do all our testing on every PR because it would take too long. So a lot of times we do a lot of testing post merge, and that makes it that we have to actually dig into the problems to see once everything merges, how do you figure out which PRs actually broke the CI, and it still kind of sucks, honestly. It's time consuming, Git bisecting, and a lot of times it falls on a few people that really care about the project. So, this is another example where I took this was our latest release in Kubernetes. I noticed one of our tests was failing. Doesn't matter what this test is, but basically Kubernetes has some automation to at least file an issue based off failed tests and link the jobs that are failing and the logs. But it doesn't have any more analysis based off of that. So I was saying, what, why can't I just go ahead and have my agent read this issue, and then I built a little skill to read in Kubernetes we use prow, so a lot of times I was just teaching it how to actually look at our prow logs to understand how to actually, where to find the logs so that it could actually do this analysis. And so this is one where this is why we're toddler engineers. This one was kind of stupid where I asked it to do this. Didn't read the PRs, and I was like, that looks legit, yeah. Found out they tagged them from the previous year. It assumed that we were in 2025. And so I got a nice fun tag to a bunch of people from a year ago, and I was like, wow, this PRs they definitely could have broke this, because these are right. And I remember thinking, those look old. That merged a year ago. And I go, oops, it did. And that was funny. But I did edit this and actually did change it so that the PRs here are actually from the right year. But yeah, we are all still kind of figuring things out. But generally, this was another one where I got the right people in the GitHub issue or the room to, there was an issue, and we got it fixed and tagged the right folks and kind of narrowed it down to a couple pull requests that people were able to respond to and actually, fix it. So basically, I've been kind of trying to follow the open source model for, maintainer. I've been kind of trying to create a repo of skills that I find useful in the Kubernetes ecosystem. I talked a little bit about triaging issues, triaging prow jobs. What I'm still working on is how to actually manage my GitHub notifications. I find I'm always missing things, and I'm still figuring out how to do that, but I'm trying to see if I can figure out a way to at least have it basically read my emails and figure out what I actually need to look at versus what is just conversations happening. And so I'm still figuring that one out. The funny ones are AI doesn't know to read the pull request template for a repo. So when you open up, what we have noticed in the Kubernetes, if people are using AI tools to contribute, it's ignoring our pull request template and just opening whatever it decides it actually needs to do. So I wrote a command that actually just tells my agent to read the pull request template before it opens up a PR. It's kind of dumb that I have to do that, but these tools aren't that smart. I would imagine they should know that. They should also, when they file an issue, read our issue template. They don't usually. And then other ones are like making sure our commit messages match our policy. I actually don't really like writing commit messages. I know it's an art, and some people in some projects really say, like, I want really detailed commit messages, and then I'm the guy that's like, lint, fix lint, CI failure, and I know I should not be, but I find I kind of don't do that, so I do use AI sometimes to help me write more detailed commit messages. So yeah, that kind of concludes my talk. I don't even know what time we're at. Oh, well, I went through much quicker. But basically, I was kind of more opening the floor for discussion if anyone's kind of using AI for aiding open source maintainership. I'm also open here to ask for you all to ask questions, and also, what tools you're finding useful in like open source development. Yeah, please go ahead.
One way we're fighting slop on the FreeBSD bug tracker is we actually disabled automatic account creation, which we thought was going to be like a horrible stopgap measure when we first started doing it. And then what actually happened is we asked people, send an email to the bug tracker, and then we say, sure, we'll make you an account. What are you interested in? And then with that, it's like we almost don't even have to triage the issues then, because we can connect people either like we know this was fixed and can tell them, or we're like, oh, you want to go talk to Adrian for that. And it's been actually, I think, leading to much higher quality engagement. Overall, we have actually more issues coming in the last year than we did the year before that, because I think people are like more excited to engage with us because we shake hands with them. But we could probably use a couple more people on the team. It's like high volume.
So do you, I take it you're not using GitHub or anything like that, and that's how you're kind of enforcing like the, like, I guess, is it like because I know a lot of the Linux kernel stuff, it'll have like a separate workflow of actually interfacing with maintainers. Like, do you have kind of like a foundation that helps sets up like that login process and everything?
We have kind of a horribly fractured workflow. It's over 30 years old, so our bug tracker is its own thing. It's bugs.freebsd.org. It runs Bugzilla, Mozilla's Bugzilla. And then that's kind of separate. We have a GitHub mirror as well, but we disable issue generation on there.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like that's always, I see that a lot in the Bugzilla or Fedora and others, and I think I kind of always thought, I was always curious of why, because it seems it's a little hard, because a lot of people, like GitHub is such an easy way to contribute, but also at the same time, you have to manage it, and that's something I actually think is an interesting take. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Maybe just a thought, but I wonder, is a good bug report as valuable PR at this point, especially if maintainers are ready to?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, what we find what people consider a bug is it's very challenging, because a lot of times in Kubernetes they'll say, I don't like this code, it doesn't work the way I want it to, change the entire project for me, and that's usually a GitHub issue that they call a bug. And we get that a lot, and so a lot of times I don't know if like opening up a PR, like part of our issue with why you file an issue is to gather consensus on whether or not it should actually be done this way. And I think that conversation is still important. And a lot of times what I've noticed, if you give a PR, people are really nice in open source, and a lot of times they don't say no, they'll just ignore it. So it's not great, but that seems to be like when you open up a PR that had no consensus, you didn't come to any of our community meetings, a lot of times maintainers just like don't look at it, and that's like what I've noticed, at least in Kubernetes, and maybe other projects are different, but I find that having that consensus, especially like some bugs are really simple, like, oh, this didn't work for me, it's a panic because I have a nil pointer exception, okay, fix that, fine, I don't care. But if it's like, I have this feature that I really need, or I think it's a bug, but really it's a feature, but I'm calling it a bug and now I'm going to fix it. That's when I kind of think that GitHub issue is still useful. Yeah, go ahead.
I like what you did with the AI summary with the bug report. I feel like, especially with newcomers, it's really difficult getting, especially getting the context of the project into our heads and getting a foot in the door and trying to address issues that we see. And so I think having that personal message to that person followed by the explicitly labeled AI summary to show, hey, look, this isn't that bad, and here is the exact steps you need to do to fix this thing. It kind of makes it a first time, a good first issue to solve. I like that approach.
Yeah, no. I was actually just talking with someone. It's a good, yeah, thank you for that feedback. It's definitely, I think it's important. That's why I like to acknowledge AI, and also, yeah, it's like human AI, like we're both kind of working together in this case, and that's helpful. I think that one thing that I was talking with someone about, like, good first issues that we're like kind of running into though now, is even tagging good first issues is now a signal for AI to actually solve them. And so, like, I know I was talking with somebody where they have this concept of like embargoing good first issues to try and make sure that they're open, like the people that like it was more a company that's trying to get high schoolers more involved in open source, and so they're trying to work with maintainers to kind of have like a private list of GitHub issues that they can give new contributors to, because if you just tag everything as like good first issue, a lot of times it does get picked up. I mean, it's not even AI, it's just generally like, I don't even think we use the good first issue as much in Kubernetes, because we find either we get like 20 different people trying to file the same pull request, and then we have to say pick one. We can't review all 20. One of these has to merge. So a lot of times we don't use that issue as much, but it is interesting to kind of. It's a different problem that now we make it easier. We want to make it easier for people to contribute, but also that means it makes it easier for AI bots to contribute. And I was actually curious, has anyone here been looking at how to like detect like whether or not, I guess something like our AI policy, one thing I realized when I was making these slides that we don't have a great answer on is what do we do in terms of like pure agents contributing code, like a claw bot or something actually contributing. Like, do you try and invalidate whether or not this is an actual person, or do you just kind of assume everyone is a person and just kind of review the pull request as is? And it's kind of something I've been wondering about now, because we find that most of the claw bots are kind of crap, like especially in some of these open source, like it kind of they'll start spamming every day, being like, please maintainer respond to this PR, please respond to this PR, and you're like, whoa, like, and then we're like, we're just gonna close you. Like, you're being annoying, and I don't think you're an actual human, but I don't know if have anyone like built that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just had a question kind of on this line. Have you considered just banning pure AI contributions? Because anything someone else can run on their own cloud bot, you can run yourself locally with your own tools?
The real question is, how do you know that that's an AI bot? And like, how do you know it's not like a fresh undergrad signing up for GitHub for the first time?
I was going to say the difference between AI bot and undergrad is.
Yeah, because I mean, I know like what some do is, I saw one of our contributors in Kubernetes does have like a skill where he does like look into the history of the contributor, where they're contributing, what forks they've done, and what kind of things. Kind of, I guess there's a new term now where like people are using like their agents to like talk about like token maxing, like to see how many tokens I can actually use, and like showcasing that in some social media thing. I don't know. But yeah, that's one thing we were like trying to avoid, is making sure we're not getting someone trying to like gain clout for their resume by like spamming all the open source projects in existence, trying to contribute. What they get from that, I have no idea. But so that's something that we've been kind of sort of like, I've seen some people talking about that, but I haven't really seen anybody really like anything like ready for anyone. Go.
I've got a thought on that, which is if it's eventually it will get better. Eventually that undergrad will be positive contribution. And
Yeah, that's kind of my approach too. Is I mean, I think if we buy the numbers from OpenAI, they're saying what 900 million people are using OpenAI. Who knows if it's actually true? But that would be like what one in five of people in the world are supposedly using OpenAI. So I imagine that a lot of people are using AI now, and so like it is getting harder and harder to say like, is my PR fully human or is it AI assisted? I don't know, and that's kind of something that a lot of times our conversations and some of them have been in the steering community, others have been in like contributor experience. It's like we don't really know what that means anymore to say something's like AI assisted, AI generated, like it's all kind of almost the same now, like, and so it's going to get harder and harder to actually tell the difference. Go ahead.
I was wondering if you or maybe someone else has tips on a project adopting a contribution policy that's maybe more restrictive than like the corporate sponsors would like.
Can you give an example?
Like if a project would want to adopt a contribution policy more akin to like QE Muse rather than a all AI contributions are welcome policy.
Yeah, I guess I don't quite follow. Sorry, what is QE moves?
QE Muse AI policy is it's impossible for you to sign the DCO with AI contributions, and that policy was in place first, so we're following that.
I,
I manage a project of 11 maintainers and spent about 5 months trying to build consensus around like what our policy should be for our software, and in the end had to put it up to a vote, and the vote was 6-5. So like I view it as an utter failure of my consensus building as the leader of this project, right? And I don't feel good about this, but like that's the reality, is that opinions are very strong.
Yeah.
And some people will die on the hill of like, this is violating the licenses of all the training data that went into this company's product that they're now trying to sell back to us. And like, I don't want that. And other people are like, yes, but I'm 50% faster now, and like everybody's doing it, and like the Linux kernel is allowing it now, so why don't we? And like, we'll never get sued. We're a small project. So I don't know. I mean, we're a scientific analysis software project. We ended up with a policy that mirrors what scikit-learn is doing, basically. So, like, find the project that you have the most affinity with and use that as your template and talk to your maintainers and go from there. Is what I'm seeing people doing in our corner of OSS.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much, I mean, yeah, he's spot on. Like, I definitely know some people that were like, I don't, like, you should not contribute AI. You should contribute to the people that actually wrote the docs. Like, why do I care about what AI, like, if the model itself, it should be, like, it's based off of, you know, stolen data, effectively. But generally, I don't know how to fight that one, because, like, these tools people are using, and that's kind of the approach we've sort of took, is, like, partly maybe it's because a lot of the, I mean, generally people are using these tools in some way, and I think they are useful. But yeah, I think that was generally the consensus. And I found there are Kubernetes, like we're not trying, like Kubernetes is such a large project for us that we're sort of trying to focus more on some sub-projects, like how can we use stuff like skills, or even like another area that I hadn't talked about here is I want to look at stuff like automated issue triage, and kind of see, like, can I use something like doc.su that the CNCF offers? But the Kubernetes community, I don't think, wants to do that on our main repo, but I'm thinking, like, you know, there are sub-projects where I'm more of a maintainer on, like even more than I am, I guess, in Kubernetes, where I can kind of, we can sort of trial these things out without having to, like, because Kubernetes is kind of like our GA, you know, it's a major project for most people, and so we don't want to be, like, going fast and loose with a lot of these things. So we're trying to like pilot it on some other sub-projects. It's kind of one approach we're trying to take now. And yeah, I think, I don't know what time we are. I think we're at time. We have 1 minute. Does anyone have a final one?
I'm curious about, you said you don't want attribution to an agent in your things.
Yeah, that's something that I think our policy is a living document, and that's something that I think I actually got some feedback from some. Like you say, like don't attribute AI or please say I'm using AI. How do I do that? Like where should it be? And in our case, I think we said like put it on the pull request. Like we have a section like special notes. I added in my create pull request. I just had like a little banner that says AI assisted, just to kind of make it clear. I guess I personally very rarely like review commit by commit, so I don't know if I really care if it's on the commit message, like this was generated with AI. Like I just find like at the end of the day, like the pull request, I like to kind of be setting the stage for a contributor or a reviewer. I don't know, like some people might review commits, so at least that's kind of the approach I take, is just to say like I did use AI, some AI was used in the making of this PR. Kind of a thing, but you know, it's sort of, there's no, I can't give you a hard and fast rule about like this is what you must have, but that's like something I find is useful.
Thanks, yeah, I was just curious what, like I want to know, I don't necessarily want to give it attribution rights, but I want to know just to know, I guess.
Yeah.
Difference between attribute and disclose.
Right,
They're
yeah.
different words for a reason.
Right. And these are also things where some are like, why do I need to do this at all? Like I don't attribute my linter when I do lend fix, and I'm like, well, that's not the same thing, but like, you know, some people have strong opinions either way, so like to some, they're like, I shouldn't attribute AI, like you shouldn't care what tools I use, like it's not like Emacs was used in the creation of this PR. But at the end of the day, like I think it's different, but I have seen that conversation is like, why should we disclose every tool we use in creation of a PR? But I don't know, it's kind of silly.
We should have people disclosing Emacs versus AI just so we know.
Because that conflict should be continued to the next generation.
Tabs and spaces. All right, well, thank you, everyone.